Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. My name is Jeffrey Davis, and I am host of Radio Entrepreneurs and also CEO of MAGE LLC, Management Consulting. And our next guest, because this is our special segment In the Weeds, our cannabis show, is Don Martelli, COO of the Belfort Group. And we're going to talk about how to battle reefer madness in the anti-cannabis communities. Wow.
It's great to be here.
Wow, people coming around with hatchets like reefer madness, and they're going to...
Virtual hatchets, but yes.
Virtual hatchets.
Yeah, it's pretty much like hand-to-hand combat.
Wow.
Yeah. So the Belfort Group, we're an integrated digital marketing and public relations agency, but we've been in real estate for probably 40 years, helping developers get their projects approved. And I'd say in the past 3 to 5 years, cannabis has been a thing.
Right.
Developers are looking to take advantage of laxed or loosened zoning bylaws to come in with cultivation facilities and launching medicinal and or adult recreational dispensaries. And oftentimes, people don't want that stuff in their backyard because they're not educated enough about what these projects can bring to their town. So we're brought in to educate and tell the story about why this project could help your particular town.
So I'm going to play stupid on
Sure.
purpose. Are you a PR firm or are you a lobbyist?
We're a public relations firm.
Okay.
Public relations, yep.
Do you do lobbying, or is it all basically through, technology communications?
We're not registered lobbyists, but oftentimes we are communicating with those influencers in town that are holding political offices. So we bleed right up to that line.
What do you find to be the biggest obstacles in terms of people's preconceptions that you need to break down?
Just awareness about what these projects bring to the town and the benefits they can provide as well. It's people often think it's going to be a parking lot full of zombie heads, when in all actuality, there's a medicinal and adult need out there where people are seeking product in a safe way, so it's not being consumed by some kid growing it in the garage. So oftentimes we're going in and just educating about what how the product is created, cultivated, nurtured, and tracked and secured. And that process happens over and over and over again. And if you're talking to a young 28 or a 32-year-old, they may get it. But at times you're dealing in some towns where it's a town meeting format, and most folks that go out to town meeting could be in their mid-50s and 60s, where they're not consuming content through online marketing channels where they need to be communicated in person. So oftentimes we're the group that goes into the community and sets up coffees and communicates what these projects are bringing to the town.
Now, I don't really have an opinion on this. I'm just asking the questions. Sure. Do we really have enough data to know what the long-term benefits are of being in communities with these things, or we have short-term data?
I think from our standpoint, from the Belfort Group standpoint, there's financial data points that we leverage all the time. So I know that the Control Commission has a baseline on what entrepreneurs can bring to the table financially, that 3% of profit. So that's a lot of money on the table. Particularly, I'm working on a couple projects in Reefer and in Peabody, Mass. And we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's basically found money. And when you're talking to folks that are complaining about potholes, schools needing supplies, and not having the financial resources to fulfill that gap, here's an entrepreneur who can bring that money to the table.
We've been speaking with Don Martelli, COO of the Belfort Group. Don, let's get a sense of who you are. What's your career track record? And
Sure.
Where did you start, and how did you get to this point?
Sure. So if you couldn't tell from the bad Boston accent, I'm a native. Grew up in Cambridge, went to Northeastern, journalism major. Worked at the Boston Globe right out the gate. Worked with Walter Robinson and that crew that was highlighted in the movie Spotlight. And ironically enough, that was a big chunk of my career. I left the newsroom to go work for a public relations firm that was doing the crisis work for the Archdiocese. So I literally went from working with Walter Robinson to getting his phone calls. That crisis communications experience has really helped me in this particular business because these are touchy topics and can oftentimes be pretty controversial. So since then, been working in public relations for about 20 years, working with real estate clients, education clients, professional services clients, really to help them get their story out to the folks they're trying to influence to, in essence, sell their product.
Interesting. What do you say, again, I think we sort of got into it, but let's say towns are selling marijuana, but it's new for them. Is that a different educational communication that you give those towns versus the towns that don't want to have it or are thinking about it?
It's it all sort of starts from the same messaging tree, if you will. It's sort of the same story, but you have to kind of tweak the content and the conversation based on what is happening or has not happened in that town. So in some of the urban communities we work in that are close to the city of Boston, this is pretty prevalent. So people are aware of what's going on in the industry. But as you get further out, so for example, a colleague of mine, Aaron Gouveia, and Mike Sherry worked in Sterling, Massachusetts, which is pretty further away from Boston than Reefer, for example. Very educated, close-knit community, but this is not like they have a very hustling and bustling Main Street. It's a rural farming community. So the pace and the nuance for educating influencers and decision makers may be different, and the format to which you do that is also different. So I think the message could be the same, but at times the pace into which you do that could be different. One of the things we found effective is bringing decision makers to facilities to show them what this is all about. So the first time I've ever visited a cultivation facility was a couple years ago up with the Wellness Connection of Maine. So I went up there and I visited their cultivation facility in Auburndale. And the process to get in, you walk into this lobby that has these very spongy floors that are basically eliminating the dirt that's on the bottom of your shoe. And I had no idea what that was for, but as you go through the tour, you realize that the product has to be clean, has to be safe. And so throughout the whole tour, you see the cultivation room, you see the picking area, you see how the product gets packaged and tracked and security that's involved. That experience just taught me how to communicate to folks we're working with how secure and what these operations are all about. And sometimes you just need to show decision makers, what this is going to do, what's coming to their town, how it can be safe and secure, and can be a very financial windfall, if you will, for those communities.
So you represent clients who are in the cannabis
Correct.
business. Is there any typical errors that they make in terms of putting their foot in their mouth?
Well, there's a lot of money to be made in this space, right? And oftentimes, clients we work with are very close to the project, meaning this is their money, this is their investment, they want this to happen. And sometimes you're working in communities that just don't want this quote-unquote stuff in their backyard. And because they're so close to it, they can tend to be maybe aggressive, and they're trying to get this thing as done as quickly as possible. Our job is to keep everybody calm and have conversations and go through that educative process.
So you're saying some of these entrepreneurs are actually agitating more than they're calming
Correct,
down.
because from their standpoint, they're, whether it's selling widgets or car parts or muffins or cookies, they're just selling a product. So these are folks that are looking to reallocate their financial resources to a new product line, a new product, and a new market that's we don't even know where it's going to be in the next 5 to 10 years. So they just want this stuff done because there's money to be made. And the sooner you can get to market, you may be the first player in that region.
So you're not just educating the potential towns and professionals, you're actually also educating the entrepreneurs.
Correct.
It's both sides you're working.
Correct. So for my team worked up in Sterling, and we had to flip a 2/3 vote to help our client get their project moving forward to reverse the ban that was there. And typically, town meeting members are older, and they all come out because it's sort of it's a community thing to go to. But we had to get out younger audiences to get there and vote. And your younger typical audience consumes media differently than your average 65-plus-year-old. So we had to use online channels and get folks there, like through Facebook, through email marketing, text messaging, and sometimes it just takes grunt work and like grassroots organizing to get people out to vote. And we equate these projects to like getting a person elected to office.
Don, interesting having you on. We've never had anybody like you on in the Weeds segment. If somebody's looking for the Belfort Group, how would they do that?
Real quick, thebelfortgroup.com.
Great. Thanks for being on the show.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Come on back, and you didn't seem like a zombie at all.
Not at all.
Okay.
I'm only one cup of coffee in, so it's all good.
No zombies in this studio. My name is Jeffrey Davis. We'll be back with more stories after this break.